Whoa! Who the hell are you?
Do a barrel roll!
Do a barrel roll? You do a barrel roll! Do I really have to review this? Again? Nah, just kidding. What am I, a caveman? Here's some backstory.
Back in 2008, a 16-year-old yours truly set out to become an angry game reviewer.
What a piece of shit.
Being the angry video game nerd fan I was, I wanted to venture into the realm of angrily reviewing games. Around that time, I was playing Star Fox Assault, and it seemed like a good match since there were aspects of that game that really annoyed me.
How the hell did I fall? Oh, there was a little gap there? I didn't notice that.
I put it up, a few years went by, and then I saw this.
Whoa!
You know you're acting as shit when it can give yourself spasms.
When you try to go backwards, you can't really go that fast.
Dude, I'm pretty sure it's common knowledge that most people can't move as fast walking backwards as opposed to walking forward. That huge chasm that Fox most likely can't even jump across is little to you. Are you expecting a sign next to it that says, "This is a cliff, you nitpicky idiot"?
So who is Ricky Ray? This is gonna sound a little confusing, but he's a YouTuber that makes good reviews of bad reviews, basically. Seriously, look at his review of this top 10 Mojo.com list, where he calls them out for likely not actually having played the game when they made this list.
Unless I'm missing something, you don't even have your own footage to work with. You had to borrow some. And your unbelievably frequent upload rate would make it questionable if you actually had time to play. This is basically the YouTube equivalent of just skimming through Wikipedia.
Thumbs up, Ricky. This calls attention to a bad trend in media criticism as of late to value entertainment over legitimate journalistic critique. So after a whopping 7 years, why am I retreading this game? 'Cause I'm fucking petty! Nah, just kidding. So a long time has passed, but I've been getting an itch to start reviewing games again. It could just be this video. Maybe I make a new channel and start a whole thing out of it. But essentially, I thought a good place to start would be a re-review of good old Star Fox Assault. A retreading of the demons from my... I can't even say that seriously. So rather than giving a clumsy Wikipedia-based overview of the Star Fox series, I think it would probably be more constructive to explain where I'm coming from when I make a review of this. I'm fully aware that Star Fox Assault was not made for this kid. I think where the confusion came in for me was playing Star Fox Adventures. This game was my introduction to the GameCube and the Star Fox series. If my username doesn't give it away, I'm a big Legend of Zelda fan, so this game obviously left a positive impression on me. I also liked the sort of R-Wing missions in that game, so when Assault's advertising talked about more R-Wing and on-foot missions, I actually thought they were talking about something more akin to Star Fox Adventures. As a gamer, I like to explore. I often spend a lot of time looking for all the secrets. Star Fox Assault is not meant to be played in that way. This game is about action and fighting. It's about keeping you on your toes. You can't play this game for immersion of exploration. This game is more about the combat, and making you feel like you're a hero on a space mission. In that vein, it can be just as immersive as Star Fox Adventures was to me. This is essentially Star Wars with anthropomorphized characters. In fact, come to think of it,
It's a trap!
when you first start up the game, you're treated to a number of options right off the bat. How hard do you want the game to be? What control setup do you want? Do you want the X and Y axis on and off? This is actually pretty cool. I do feel like some compromises were made here. Each of these playstyles affect the R-Wing, on-foot, and Landmaster controls. While I do really wish that you could switch these controls directly from the in-game menu, you can find them on the main title screen. If I were to compare these to some first-person counterparts, the first style is a lot like Metroid Prime, the second one like Halo, and the third one like garbage. I believe in a compromise to make every control style sort of work within a specific difficulty, you'll notice the enemies mainly stay at the same level as your target on the ground missions, which is actually quite ideal for the playstyle I picked, which would be the first one. There are some tactical advantages to control style too, but if I'm being honest, the GameCube controller isn't well suited for this type of gameplay. So, tank controls it is! The C-stick is pretty small, making precise aiming much more difficult. The GameCube controller is one of my favorite controllers ever, but this would be one of my few complaints. By the way, I apologize for that crud on my controller. That's just freaking nasty. If I were to make a gripe about control style A, I would say that there are some things implemented in other games that are left out of this one. For example, in Metroid Prime, if you press B and pull back on the control... What? Okay, maybe I'm thinking of Star Fox Adventures? Nope. Oh! In Resident Evil 4, you'll do a quick turnaround. I guess this isn't super necessary in a game like Metroid Prime, since the pace is a bit slower and you can lock onto enemies, but this would be something that's sorely missed in a game where I'm constantly getting swarmed from behind. I honestly don't think this ruins the combat, though. Another thing to mention is the Landmaster. Now, I griped quite a bit about this tank in my last review, but actually it's kinda like a super-powered version of tanks in other games. You can plow right through enemies, you can get a more powerful gun, you can fly, hell, you can do a frickin' barrel roll in this thing. While there are a few things I would have changed about the controls, I've played far worse, and playing through this now, it's actually pretty fun. The game starts right after the events of Star Fox Adventures, putting you through the classic Star Fox arcade-style 3D shooter. These sections are definitely the game's strongest points. You get all the basic items seen in typical Star Fox games. Rings, bombs, the whole like. Occasionally your partners get into trouble, and when you help them, you're rewarded with something. This first level is classic Star Fox, through and through, ending on a pretty fun boss battle with Andross's nephew.
I must bring an end to our relationship!
But we only just met. Think of the things we could have done together. Honestly, this character is pretty goofy, and I really enjoyed his cheesy delivery.
Is that all you fools have got? I am the one and only true heir to the great Emperor Andross!
Speaking of characters, you get your original Star Fox cast of Fox, Falco, Slippy, and Peppy, and straight from Star Fox Adventures, Crystal. The voice acting varies in performance, but the actual writing and plot is pretty good. If you really analyze it, you can find specific plot points. I imagine the actual structure of this game, where each mission was given its own area and sequence, made it much easier to write the story around. And this story actually has a lot going for it. Most of the missions in this game consist of a few phases, generally starting with destroying 6 to 8 targets, then moving on to something else. Usually, you'll be put in the R-Wing, but there are a couple of occasions where you shoot from the wing of another character's ship. I will say, mowing down enemies with a machine gun or a Landmaster is pretty satisfying. Some enemies are designed to resist weaker weapons, so you'll have to make sure to strategize. There isn't actually much variation to the enemies themselves on the ground missions. The enemies you see on the first stage are also used on the last. Mission 2 serves as a training ground for learning the ground and Landmaster controls, which is laid out pretty well. You kill some enemies, destroy several easy targets, and fight another boss, all while progressing the story. By the way, is that an orchestra? Dude, this is freaking awesome! Any Star Fox fan should honestly be thrilled by this. Hearing many of their favorite classic tunes fully realized as an orchestral piece. I know, in my old review I said the music tends to loop and repeat itself constantly. But that's something that really happened to me because I spent hours exploring every nook and cranny of the stage. There's really no collectibles of note, and the graphics are honestly somewhat unimpressive, so there's really no reason to do that. Don't use your brain, just fire away! Classic Star Fox, am I right? Unlike Star Fox Adventures.
It's always the same with you, Fox. Shoot first, ask questions later. This mission is about saving the planet, not blowing it up. It requires a different tactic. Try using your head.
I don't know. I don't want to throw around accusations, but I feel like this game might have in part been Nintendo's answer to fans who are unhappy about Star Fox Adventures.
I wasn't.
Me neither. Moving on. Mission 3 has you destroying 8 targets with a meter on the side to show how well your partners are holding off the enemy fighters. When it gets too high, you have to go help ward them off. I get the extra challenge, but honestly I found it a tad aggravating. I could have 2 left and be on the top floor, and oh god damn it, I gotta drop down 3 flights and hope I get outside fast enough. This brings up my biggest problem in the entire game. If you die, the target count gets reset. On this particular stage, it's not a huge deal, but we'll get back to that later. After you destroy all the targets, you get a little arena battle with the Starwolf crew, subsequently getting informed that Pigma was kicked out, leading to Mission 4.
Ah, the lovely Crystal. Words do you no justice. I am Panther Caroso. Here's to us.
Yikes! Mission 4 takes place on a snowy planet, and I really enjoy the first part. There's a windy storm pretty much obscuring your view while you try to find 3 targets. You need to use the Landmaster to move around. If your Landmaster blows up, run. Run like hell. I think for this level of difficulty, 3 targets is the right amount. The next section, unfortunately, is really lame though. You get surrounded by security bots, and this is one of 2 places in the game where I really would have preferred Control Style 2, if the C-Stick wasn't so wrong for this style of usage. So, I'm sitting here like an idiot, waiting for the bot to lift for 2 seconds so I can shoot it in the air, run, and repeat. To make things worse, they send more at you and make you do it again. I do like what it leads up to, though, which is just being frickin' surrounded by these things. Only for Falco to bust in and engage the first section where you fly on the, R-Wing wing. This next section is a lot of fun, mainly because the weapon you get is a cannon with unlimited ammo, so you're just firing away. After this, the level climaxes with a boss fight. The time limit on this boss is interesting. I'm surprised this is the only part of the game with a time limit. That's something I noticed with this game, is aspects you think would show up more often sometimes just don't. And there's a few things you only do once or twice. The boss itself is aesthetically pleasing, but not particularly interesting. The cannon opens to unleash a spawn of enemies, you shoot a bomb into the cannon. Nothing to it really. Mission 5 is just pure, classic Star Fox arcade 3D style shooting through an asteroid field. At the end, you fight an asteroid-infested Pigma. It's not too difficult, really. Just shoot Pigma when he shows and dodge your projectiles. Not too much to say here. Honestly, this is probably my favorite stage in the game. Mission 6 takes place on Dinosaur Planet.
I'm sensing a distress call from Planet Sauria.
I like the setup. I like the large map covered in areas like those in Star Fox Adventures. But what I don't like is trying to destroy 8 targets in a row, over and over without dying. I honestly had to spend way too much time re-destroying targets I had already destroyed. It isn't fun, it feels a lot more like padding to me. Also, the partners in this game are useless on the ground. Crystal spends the whole mission just sitting in this one pyramid. Speaking of partners, in most of these levels, you tend to have a few partners in the air, with one on the ground to help you out. Occasionally, the partner in the air gets chased and you have to either grab a Landmaster or R-Wing to help. You could technically get them from the ground, or just let them die. It just affects your score at the end, which honestly is pretty inconsequential. Oh, and your moral compass, which honestly is pretty inconsequential. There are instances where the same dialogue plays over and over. Generally, your partner stays in one area, pretty much being useless for the duration of the mission. So I actually dug into this a little more, seeing what Crystal would do if I tried to get her to move, since otherwise she just hangs out in the pyramid. If you keep the camera on her, she'll follow you out, and from there, she'll circle around the hill the pyramid is located on for the duration of the mission. This is just freaking ridiculous. Okay, for real though, This game would be much improved if any mission with more than 6 targets would just keep your target count after you die. If you get a game over, you get sent back to the start screen. I think that's more than enough punishment, having to recomplete every section of the mission once you run out of lives. So for Mission 7, after you destroy 9 freaking targets, are you kidding me? You play what I thought was the hardest part of the whole game. I don't know about anyone else, but I had a really hard time beating this boss. It actually felt like the only way to beat it was to be aiming in the perfect spot for the whole match. This was just on normal difficulty, by the way. You honestly have very little room for error here. Now, I made the mistake of switching to Style B in order to make aiming before sniping easier in the section before this boss battle. Don't do that. Now you have to use this tiny C-stick to precisely aim for the boss's head. I lost all my lives and had to start over. Seriously, this is the only part of the game that took me this many tries. The worst part was getting sent back to destroy the 9 targets after failing too many times. Playing Mission 7 is like pouring gasoline on your pancakes. You've got perfectly good pancakes, but why you gotta go make things harder than they have to be? In all seriousness, I do want to address one argument in defense of having to destroy all these targets. You can go into the user settings and adjust the difficulty, lowering the amount of targets required to be destroyed. I think this goes back to making compromises. If the game saved when every target broke and you only had 5 targets to destroy, this wouldn't be a very long game, would it? Rather than making a game with one refined experience, you get somewhat of a watered-down and forgivably clunky experience, with different levels of difficulty and control setup to try to adjust it for your taste. I don't think this is a bad approach, but I still think the game, especially Mission 6 and 7, could have just used some polish. So before I go over the last few missions, I wanted to talk about the multiplayer a little bit. So, I grabbed a friend to help me out. So, how was the multiplayer experience? Before factoring anything else in, it was actually pretty fun. The only critique we really had was that we wished we could play as more characters, maybe the Starwolf crew, for example. That said, when I read reviews of this initially, they pointed to the multiplayer as being empty. Around this time, you had Smash Bros. Melee on the GameCube and Halo 2's revolutionary online gameplay on the Xbox. So I can see how, when stacked on the shoulders of giants, this seems pretty empty. As a side feature of a GameCube game that's mainly meant to be a single-player experience, though, this was honestly a fun little surprise. Dude! This is a hilarious dance animation!
Alright, you know what? I'm just playing Slippy for now.
Dude, he just fucking dabs and then he just like, he's doing this like dive and fucking like,
This is the first time I've won in my entire life!
It was no more than it was meant to be, and it provided an overall fun experience. So in Mission 9... Wait a minute, am I forgetting something? Oh yeah! In Mission 8, you have to defend the base. Destroy the incoming missiles before they hit the ships. Not too much to say here. It can be a little clunky at times, but there isn't anything too offensive going on in that respect. Just classic Star Fox arena dogfighting, really. Anyway, back to Mission 9. To be honest, there was a redeeming factor to replaying these targets over and over. The layout. Every target is guarded by a different set of enemies, and it's a satisfying challenge to take whatever weapons you have to try to strategize a way to complete this. My same critique holds true about wishing your target count wouldn't reset, but this level is the ground mission formula for Star Fox Assault working at its best, I think. I couldn't put the game down trying to complete this part, as frustrating as it was. The final flying section and boss in Mission 9 are pretty cool as well, but I actually like the asteroid belt a little better. One thing I really liked that I neglected to mention earlier is how you end up forming an alliance with Starwolf, who helps you complete the fight toward the center of the asteroid. It's also nice that this game didn't end with a fight against Andross like every other Star Fox game, basically. they cleverly put that into a fight at the beginning and carried out the story without shoehorning him in. Your final boss is pretty standard with multiple forms. Not particularly special, but it's a good way to go out. I honestly have a lot of respect for Star Fox Assault, just because of all the chances they're taking here. The safe thing to do would have been to create a purely R-Wing based game like on the SNES and N64, but these guys took a handful of risks with the on-foot and Landmaster portions. So, final verdict? While Star Fox Assault has its flaws, it's honestly not half bad. It's got some fun space battles, a barrel roll Landmaster, and mostly competent but sometimes clunky on-foot sections that, at its worst, can be pretty frustrating, but at its best, provide areas filled with enemies that you really need to devise a strategy for based on what weapons you've collected. I'd recommend this game to any Star Fox fan, really. As for me personally, I'm gonna be playing through Star Fox Adventures. Whether or not I go on to make more reviews, this'll be my last review for the Wind Waker of Time channel. I feel like I've come full circle here, so with that said, for the last time, Wind Waker of Time, out.